Recording in progress.
Okay. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call. McKee here, Schultz.
Here.
Latimer.
Present.
Fahrenkamp.
I'm here.
Nichols.
Here.
Perfect. Like to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On to agenda approval. I know we have a couple potential changes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Since we don't have our commissioners to recognize tonight in the audience, we thought it might make sense to pull items 6A and B and recognize them. With all of the snow and winter weather, we think it's best to recognize them at a future meeting and get that lined up for them. So we'll pull 6A and B. We did receive a request from the applicant to remove item 8B, which is the concept plan for Mira Village. 10A, we did receive a request from the party related to 10A to table that to March 9th. And then we do have an addition of a bonding bill update for council under 11B and a Hackamore Road update under 11.
11C for the Hackamore.
Would note, minutes are on the dais and have been added to the agenda packet as well.
Perfect. Anything from council?
Yeah, can we, on the 8B,
Yeah. Okay.
we get into these situations where they have what's our window to,
This is always just a concept.
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 There
Just
isn't
a
a clock.
concept.
okay, no
That- so
clock.
this is
Just
Okay.
talking to us.
concept
Good thinking,
and
though.
they-
Thank you, Alan.
That was the brief
Yes.
discussion, right?
Okay, fair
One-
enough.
One concern I have on that point is, in the work session, we were promised a chance to ask some questions to some parties in that item. Do we have a
Yes.
sense for why they decided not to talk to us?
The item that you wanted to ask questions about isn't part of 8B.
Yeah, I was getting a little
And
confused about
the
that.
part that is on 8B, you gave very clear direction on, and so they felt like there was really no need to have that conversation again.
So that's not tabled, it's being pulled completely?
As
For
of
now.
right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Commission representatives, we have Jay and Val from Planning and Parks and Trails respectively, maybe online? If not, it's
Yep,
okay.
we have Jay and we have multiple folks on him. Can't tell if Val is on yet.
We also have a built-in in-house planning, or a Parks and Trails commissioner too, so, perfect. All righty, open forum. We'll go right into that.
Anyone in the audience wanting to speak on open forum can come to the podium, state your name and address. If you're joining us virtually, you can press *9 or click reactions and raise your hand if you're on an electronic device. Mayor and council, no one is raising their hand. Just gonna double check, there are a few things in the chat, so we want to make sure.
Gotcha.
That does not look like anyone's raising their hand.
Okay. Sounds good. And we will move right on to, let's see, we have 6A and B were removed from the agenda, so we will go on to consent agenda, item 7, which consists of 7A through G. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Can I pull G, please?
Yep. Got that. Anything else?
My second Alan's pulling that.
Sounds good. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 7A through 7F.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And 7G, which I believe is a donation? Yes. Did you want to?
Yeah,
Perfect.
so as I read this, we're receiving a donation from a vendor that we use as part of the sports program. it just seems like there's a little bit of impropriety here, so can you give me some background on any other vendors that we may do this from? Do we have a past accepting donations from people that we contract with?
So, thank you for asking the question. So with the sports items that we're talking about, it's photography, and they are not under a contract with us. We don't actually receive funds or pay for services. We have reached out to multiple vendors who do photography, and they come in at no cost to the city, and this is multiple vendors that we reached out to when we've done this, and the way it's set up is they come in and take pictures, and they only receive if parents want copies of the pictures, and then pay for the pictures, and then give a portion back to the city. There were multiple vendors that we looked at. Other associations and other cities use this type of model before. For this particular project, I would say I don't know that we've had anything quite like this on other, with other types of vendors.
If we approach multiple people to come take pictures, how do we decide on
Who does it?
who does it?
So Jessica Christensen Buck is the one who's worked on this, so she could probably speak a little bit better to.
Is she on?
To it. She is not on yet. She will be later, but she and I had a conversation about there was a look at the prices as well as customer service and what other associations and cities had received. So it was a variety of pieces from if there is any contribution back to the city, costs and customer service were my understanding when we last looked at this. This is the second vendor we've used similar to this, but it's certainly something that we could reconsider. With the donations going back directly towards programming, it does help the costs of the programs.
Gotcha. Do you know when we expect she'll be on? So we could move this maybe later in the agenda if that works.
Certainly.
If you think.
So they become
Or
a
we could table.
By
it
some
for-
process, they become the preferred vendor that gets access to the kids in our sports program.
Right.
So like, the city is the gatekeeper to this company getting access to the kids in our program. And so like, we're in a position of power and authority over that access. And I am not comfortable getting any sort of donation or anything that looks bad or looks like corruption or some buying of access. I would say, because of our position, the mere presence of something that looks like a conflict of interest becomes a conflict of interest.
Makes sense.
I think I would vote we don't take this as a donation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather have them factor in, if they're gonna do something like this, factor it into their pricing that they deal with instead of
To the end user instead
to
of.
the end
to
user versus.
Program.
Yeah, because it almost looks like we've gotten a donation in the
Yep.
past, we'll continue to get a donation. These are our preferred vendor because we do get a donation. I understand that it has a direct impact going back into the programming to lower the cost of the programming, but it just has a dirty perception at
Ma-
first glance.
Maybe if we
Can we?
did not vote on this, but we gave direction to staff to see if they could work something like that out where they just, appreciate that 790, 190, try to tie that back into reducing the price or back into, like Dean said, to the end user.
Would it be advantageous for us to ask Jessica just before we make anything on what she believes
We certainly could.
when she gets on, before we make that?
She's at the
So
JC's
maybe-
meeting at the moment, but we'll
Do you
be
wanna-
doing
can we
this.
table
Well,
it
we
till
will
next-
certainly table it.
Let's table it.
Let's, I'll make a motion to table 7G. I don't know if I want to put a date on that or just leave it.
We could table it to, by
I think what's on, Mark.
by the end of, we do
Yeah.
have some things on the ninth, so we could. look
Table
at
it to a
maybe the
meeting
March
by the end-
23rd,
by the end of March.
March, or by the end of April.
Sure,
I
and
think
we can
that
pick
these
it
are
on a day
for
that we have.
Previous ones, so we could look at how it could allocate towards the next year.
So my motion would be to table it to a meeting sometime between now and the end of April at staff's discretion on when it fits in best to the meeting.
I'll second that.
What was that? Table it?
Table it to between now and the end of April, so whatever that the second April meeting is, and up to staff's discretion on when it fits in best with what else is on the agenda.
We can gather some more information. Are there things that would be helpful to understand kind of the number of vendors or different?
Yeah.
kinds of-
Can I make a motion?
Well, I already
have
seconded
one.
his.
But we
Okay,
can,
okay, let's.
we do have a motion in a second, so let's vote on that unless there's other discussion on it. Do you want to
Sorry.
comment on it? No, that's fine.
I'd rather make a motion we don't accept it and be
Okay.
done with it and don't put it on a future agenda and just not accept donations of these kind where it's a preferred vendor that gives some sort of kickback to the city, period.
Gotcha.
It looks like that, it smells like that,
What if,
but we can discuss it. I just don't wanna waste time.
Right.
Yeah.
what about those sponsors of National Night Out and stuff like that? They donate and give a lot of things to this.
So this-
Could that photography group do this and it wouldn't be considered kickback kind of deal? I'm just asking the questions.
My understand, because the perception, from what I'm hearing, is because they're providing a service, that it feels like that when others are providing a service for the event or donating their time at the event, it could be different. I think it's about your perception of.
Yeah.
And I'd actually like to amend my own motion, if, Alan, if you're open to that. To also direct staff to see if it can be worked out with them to just try to, like we were saying earlier, incorporate that to the end user, and then maybe there wouldn't be anything to bring back.
We could just give a staff report
Yeah.
at that point if we could.
Is that,
That's fine.
so we'd have a motion and a second on that. Anything else discussion-wise? Otherwise? all
Can I
those-
just clarify that motion?
Yes.
The first one was you and Schultz, and then you amended it. So do
Yep.
we have to make a new motion, or can we keep the same?
Friendly.
Oh,
amendment.
perfect, okay.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
4-1. Perfect, thank you. Okay, on to planning business. We have a public comment opportunity for items 8A and 8C. 8B was removed at the beginning of the agenda. So we will go into the public comment opportunity first.
Thank you, Mayor. So anyone joining us in the audience can come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Anyone joining us virtually, if you want to speak on items 8A or C, you can press star 9 and raise your hand, or click reactions and raise your hand. Mayor and council, at this time, there's no one raising their hand.
Okay, and let's go right into 8A, which is the sketch plan for Karenemi Meadows at 23185 County Road 10.
Just one moment.
Sounds good.
here.
Are they here?
So this is a sketch plan for an outlot that was platted previously as part of Karenemi Meadows with the addition of another parcel. So with Karenemi Meadows, there was a 9-lot subdivision with one large outlot. The applicant is now looking at that outlot in a roughly 40-acre piece on Larson that they would combine. And so when you do the open space preservation plat that they're proposing, you do the math, and they are proposing 3 commercial lots, 8 residential lots, and 2 outlots. And that does work under the open space preservation plat math. Next slide. This is cleaner in your packet. For some reason, it's kind of faded out and hard to read up here, but because the outlot A that was platted with Kieran Meadows had 4 development rights, and the Wicht property that's south of that has 4 development rights, they would use 3 for the commercial and result with 8 for the open space preservation plat down there on Larson. Thank you, Jess. The commercial lots in this concept wrap around the Public Works facility. So there's one on the north side, and then what we call a flag lot directly north and east of the Public Works facility, meaning that lot right now does not meet the minimum frontage requirements for the commercial district. And then south of Public Works is a 3rd commercial lot. The applicant would request a comprehensive plan amendment to re-guide them from rural ag to rural service commercial, there, and rezone from rural residential to rural commercial. That is similar to the zoning up on 19 and 10 for those properties. And then the property on Larson would be an open space preservation plat. And I noted in the staff report that technically this does comply with what the code says. But interestingly, the open space preservation plat, which was written a little differently, says 50% of the open space must be buildable. Buildable is different from developable in our code. Buildable does not deduct floodplain, and this is the first project where we've had so much floodplain. And I think it's important to note that here, because frankly, very little of that open space is truly upland outside of the floodplain and shoreland. It's still open space, it's still 50% of the land, and it does comply with the code as it's written today. Regardless of the feedback from the council on this particular concept plan, staff does recommend that we change that to use developable like we do in the rest of the subdivision and zoning ordinance. Next slide. So again, the property, the blue dot where the arrow is pointing is Public Works, and as I said, this property, the commercial properties wrap around Public Works and would become the new light pink. So it would just extend that rural commercial property south. It would be separated from the residential areas by the creek. So that's, as we talk about buffers, that's a good buffer from adjacent land uses. Next slide. I mentioned that the plan has 2 outlots. On the north side of the parcel, or north image there, excuse me, is the concept plan that we saw previously before Kieran Meadows came in. And on the south side is the current concept. And the current concept shows an outlot B up along County Road 10 on the west side of the creek. And the code does not allow unbuildable outlots, so that either needs to be part of Outlot A or part of Lot 9. I think combining it with Lot 9 would be a challenge because the trail will go through that property. It's not unheard of, but those are things to be aware of if there's a trail easement, dividing a residential property. In this case, the creek would also divide the residential property. The upside to adding it to Lot 9 is it increases that lot size. That lot has a lot of non-conforming structures on it, so that brings it closer into compliance. But regardless, that Outlot B would not be approved and would need to be combined with either Lot 9 or Outlot A. The county was sent this concept plan, and they did provide comments, which were in your packet. The concept shows access for the residential lots on Larson Road, and that's consistent with county transportation policy. Our engineer's memo notes that improvements would be required on Larson Road. The commercial lots as shown suggest that they are individual driveways onto County Road 19, and the county would not support that. They will require one access for the two commercial lots on the north and the Public Works site to have one shared access. They have concerns with Lot 3. If it remains in that location, they will look at it. They understand that the creek is separating it from the properties to the north and from the property to the south. So while they may allow an access, it would depend on what the user was, and it may require turn lanes. I put these two images here. Staff continues to believe that the access north of Public Works needs to be a public street. We do not think the city should be in the business of a shared driveway with private users. And so something more like the previous concept with a new cul-de-sac to serve Public Works and the two new commercial lots on the north, or shifting that third lot north, is what we recommend. And so council should talk about that. Next slide. Trails were a big discussion with Kieran Meadows plat. When that came in last year, it went to Parks Commission, came to the council, and council supported their recommendation, which was on the left side, the red line was the trail that was approved generally by the Parks Commission, with the note that the blue line would be dedicated when the commercial property was developed. The trail was not taken when the plat was recorded because Public Works and Parks wants to walk the site with the landowner to locate that trail appropriately. That was approved as a either a mown or a wood chip trail, but we needed to walk the site to determine what worked best. So with this plan, I've drawn the red lines on the plan that would follow what was approved previously and then continue the red line south along the north side of the creek out to 19. The blue line is where the old trail was showing. We were gonna have it come out there because that was the south side of the property. That probably doesn't make as much sense anymore. But then on the north, the east-west red section, somewhere up there, there needs to be a commercial connection out to 19. So the trail that we would recommend looks something like that. If this proceeded, we would send it back to Parks and Trails Commission to review with the new plat. And we would, in the interim here in the spring, walk the site with the applicant to determine the best location. Next slide. So the applicant is requesting comments on this concept plan, and again, comments are advisory, but as much feedback as you can provide helps them make decisions. So we have an open space preservation plat with 8 lots accessing onto Larson on the south, and then 3 commercial lots at this point sort of wrapping around Public Works. So locations and design of those, as well as the idea of how those commercial lots get access, I think are the 3 things we really are looking for feedback on. The applicant did say he would be available remotely, so he may be online
And he is, yep.
Okay,
if you have questions for him.
perfect. Any questions for Kendra, or do we want to hear from the applicant next?
Kendra, you said that a fair portion of what would be Outlot A is not actually buildable in the future. Roughly, what's the breakdown there? How much would be buildable? Do we have an estimate for that?
Yep, so the open space in Outlot is 40.9 acres. The usable open space, as defined by the code, which just subtracts the wetland and creek, is 34 acres. So we lose 6 acres to that. And the area below the floodplain is 19 and a half. So 25 and a half of the 40 acres are not buildable.
Great, thank you.
The open space, I should have also noted, though, the open space requires 32.4 acres to be preserved.
Okay. All right. Any?
there's buildable acreage, but based on the lot line, is there actual location for a buildable site?
That's a good question.
So the buildable area in Outlot A, for example, outside of the floodplain, is still in the shoreland area, but it's kind of that wooded area between commercial lot 3. A good chunk of that is upland. And there are some upland areas behind lot 5. So they're kind of scattered throughout. I mean, there's more than it may look like, but it's not connected, and so in that way, it's really not the most usable upland.
I think maybe we want to hear from the applicant. If he has anything he wants to add?
Nate, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, feel free to. Nate? We can't hear you at the moment.
Could you message him my number and I can try to call me and now we're really loud on this.
Nate?
I can pull it up.
He is noting he didn't ask questions, but for whatever reason,
He's noting what?
that he, his connection is not the best. So.
Well, if he doesn't want to,
No, he said he'd be happy to. His just connection is not the best
Gotcha.
where he is in the, he's not, he's abroad. So they're having
Gotcha.
some potential connection issues. Nate, if you, would want to type in the chat, we can kind of,
try.
try to see if you'd be willing to address anything, any questions that you all might have. We can do some typing to him.
Sure.
Nate? Unmuted himself and his video is on. Seems to be working, but,
I sent you his number.
oh,
I might have it too.
I'll forward it. Nate, you want me to put him on speaker?
That'd be great.
Nate, I'm gonna go ahead and try calling you.
Although if he's out of the country, hit decline if it's gonna be too bad of a bill.
You're calling me, though, Jess.
Oh, I'm calling you. Wrong phone number. That didn't work. Technology. So great. We did some tests before the meeting just to
Yeah, this
make sure it
stuff's
worked.
working.
Nate, can you hear us? It is out of
Now you're calling Alan.
See how many people I can call?
He might not answer, worried about that bill.
Number you have dialed is incorrect. Please try again.
I'm gonna make a motion, we table this.
Yeah.
Second.
We're having.
All right,
some
we have a
technical
motion and a second to table this. Just a quick question on that. Any specific time frame?
Wait, so this one is another just share your thoughts?
Yes,
Or we could just share our thoughts.
we could.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
think you could certainly share your thoughts.
I feel like there's a
This
couple
specific-
discussion points that we need to have with them,
I'm
though.
gonna withdraw my table. I think,
Okay.
I think it's fair to discuss it.
Okay. That works too.
So Nate will provide we'll have folks provide feedback and then we can,
Hey, I have Nate on the phone here.
I think going forward, though, if somebody brings us a concept plan,
I don't
it'd be
know.
appropriate if they appeared.
It's helpful.
It's
yes,
helpful.
I think they're out of abroad for a,
Extended
an
period.
extended period of time.
Gotcha.
They were expecting the technology to work.
They were expecting that technology to work. We're
Can
gonna
you guys
try-
hear me at all? Hello? Can you guys hear me? I have Nate on the phone.
Perfect. I think we got you here. We have a little bit of feedback, but it should work.
Just on
Okay.
our end.
So go right ahead.
Yeah, I have Nate here.
Hey, Nate.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, sorry about the technical problems there.
No worries.
I think Kendra has pretty well laid out the specifics of the plan. As far as the upland billable ratio, I guess that, we complied with the code that was existing. So I guess one, I'd be looking for any insight as to if that's going to change. And then secondly, we did have a meeting with the county, and I guess my interpretation of it was that they would consider access to 19, but they wanted to hear what the city's viewpoint on this project would be, and of course the use of that property, whether it was commercial or residential, would be instrumental. So they would base their decision. They don't want to see a grocery store in there that's got daily traffic, from hundreds of retail customers, but they might consider some other type of use. Say, they don't mind a single entry per day. They just don't want hundreds of entries per day.
Right. And I think that's what Kendra was saying, yeah.
And then, if there's any further
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, can we disconnect? Or are there specific questions for Nate?
Or
Or
whatever you have. If you don't have, not for the applicant. Maybe let's check, does anyone have questions for Nate or his team?
I do have one. Nate, can you speak to how you would anticipate Outlot A redeveloping in the future when municipal services would be available?
Well, that outlot, we hard to imagine where city code might change in the future. So I think that, we're talking about a very, very long time horizon. And we really haven't contemplated any additional difficult thoughts at this time on that outlot.
Thank you.
Nothing else for them, then maybe we can end the call and then just make sure to stay on for feedback, guys. But I think just for ease of the audio issues and everything, we'll end the call.
Is there any reason why the outlot has to be the size it is? I mean, can't the 3 commercial lots be bigger to take up the outlot, or has to be continuous?
No, the open space and preservation
OSP,
plat for the.
To get the bonus.
Yeah, that outlot's tied to those 8 lots on the
Yep.
south.
All right, sorry. Thank you.
And I think one of his questions was, do we anticipate that the definition changing? And I think you stated that staff would like to see that change regardless of this application.
Right.
Gotcha.
Just for consistency,
Right.
it's a little confusing.
can I make a motion that we make that change? But it can't impact this, but so long as you brought it up, can't we make a motion that we change it?
What are we changing exactly?
Before we talk
Where would
about-
that be? I'm trying to think if it needs a public hearing or.
Yeah.
So it would need to go to the planning commission, have a public hearing, and come back to you. And it's just really a consistency thing. I don't think until we looked at this one, it came up as an
Yeah.
issue in how we define it. Paul Otto, and I don't know if that was Paul on the phone or not, but I think the math he has, this probably still complies under the developable definition, but I just think we shouldn't have a definition of buildable and a definition of developable, so we would like to see that changed.
So maybe it could be a motion to direct staff to
Yeah.
go forward with that.
Did you make that motion?
No.
And I'm seconding it?
I was just
I think you made that motion.
giving
No,
feedback.
I know.
Just-
I would like to make a motion to have staff look into making that change.
We have a second.
I'd second that.
We certainly can do that. I'm just wondering if, where do you want to put that in the priority? Do you want that, just as we're thinking about the budget, as we're looking at cleanup items? That was one of the things we had talked about, doing some cleanup items, and we could add it to that.
Yeah, that would make
Item.
most sense to me, just whenever we're doing some of the miscellaneous cleanup stuff, right?
Perfect. Just wanted to
Pretty
clarify if
simple
it's
change.
something
Yeah.
you wanted us to start tomorrow, or if it could, we lump it
Yeah, I think
with a
whenever
bigger
we're doing,
project.
whenever we're doing some of the cleanup stuff works.
Thank you.
That's a
Wanted to
complete
clarify.
aside.
Yeah. So we do have a motion and a second, discussion, anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Then back to this. So the main, and there was one slide, I think, or maybe Kendra just summarized it kind of the kind of 3 or so big discussion topics. The commercial lots, the zoning changes being proposed, the access. My biggest question is particularly with the access by Public Works, given the conversation we had when the original part of this development, or the original Karenini development came in. And then I guess just the 8 lots, residential lots to the south, and the trail issue. So does anyone want to start with any of those?
I think we're on record as saying that we don't want to share a road.
Right.
That's, we've said it,
I think
we've
we
talked
were
about
very
it
clear, yeah.
a bunch of times. And it has to do with turning around vehicles and loading vehicles and that kind of stuff. So I think that's one thing. And then, I would like to identify, because on lot 3, he said, well, it can't be a grocery store. But if it had one trip, that would be okay. I would like to actually hone in on that a little bit more, like a average, some sort of average daily trip or whatever.
Get a sense of what they're talking about?
Kinda.
Yeah.
I don't know if it matters really. I mean, if we say, yeah, that's fine, then I guess it's up to him and the county to sort that out, right? Okay, so then I guess I don't need to care about that.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Gotcha. How about the overall zoning change of those 3 lots around? I mean, I think, personally, I think it can make sense that it's kind of extending that zoning. We don't have the zoning map up right now, but the pink, essentially just extending that down a little further. I think it's probably a more compatible use with Public Works than residential would be.
Yeah, and I think the eight lots to the south provides a good buffer of that with the creek.
I agree.
There's minimal impacted homes across 19.
Right.
I mean, I guess my preference would be commercial lot 3 would actually be part of a single access point, but if he has flexibility with the county and they allow it, my only other ask would be that it does not access into the home directly across the street from it. That it be offset somehow, so,
Okay.
lights wouldn't be coming in and out.
Yeah, I would agree. And that, again, be up to the county really, but
Yeah, but there looks like there's enough site plane there that they would probably have some leeway as to where they could move that a little bit.
you would think. Any other comments on the layout of the third one in particular seems to have the most questions about it in terms of layout, the third commercial lot. I think I'm okay with it if those issues are figured out in terms of access.
I had a question on what the park dedication requirement would be for this, not in terms of dollars, but in terms of land, based upon how it's currently zoned. This is a nice piece of property in the sense that we're going to have some trail near it. We've got a creek in this area. We talked in the past about trying to get a little bit more high-quality parkland. Would this be an area where we would want to try to make that happen? How much would we be able to, just based upon if we chose not to accept cash in lieu, how much land would the city be entitled to if this were to develop this way?
Do you have you did the park dedication ordinance? I didn't, so I don't have that.
You know, the city wanted to buy this property
How
like
much it would be.
7, 8 years ago,
While ago,
right?
yeah.
We had an option.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yes. We could have bought it.
I have I'm not sure if this is exactly what you adopted, but on the December 22nd meeting, the update was that for rural residential, it would be 5% of the land.
Yes.
And for commercial industrial, it would be 4% of the land, so say 5% of the land.
Something in that area, okay.
And
How much is?
I think that's 100 acres roughly, 108 acres, I think, total.
So not
Call it
much,
100 acres, so
Yeah, not a
5
lot.
acres.
yeah.
Again, it's based on net and
Mhm.
not that, so.
No, that makes sense. It just seems like that might be a good opportunity for us, given the quality of the trees there, having a body of moving water, at least when it's wet, in the area.
Well, that,
Like an open space park, are you suggesting?
Potentially, I mean, in the beginning, probably. Who knows what it might develop into in 60 or 70 years.
that's something maybe we could see more regardless. So let's say they were going forward with an application, we'd have that number more nailed down in terms of what it would be.
Right.
Cash and lieu wise or acreage.
Right, so for the 9-lot Kirinimi Meadows subdivision, we took the trail, and we ended up giving them no park dedication for the trail easement, because it's all under the floodplain. So we took cash for those 9 lots. So we'd have to do the math for the upland and see what we end up with. Are you suggesting taking the whole outlot as public park?
I think that would have the most benefit, but I'm not sure what's really affordable, given everything else we want to do with parks.
Yeah, that's, I think, a bigger issue. Yeah, my gut says, given the park projects we have lined up, that it would be tricky to be able to fit that in the budget. Not that it's not an interesting idea. But I think it still could be a nice trail through there, by itself. So yeah, any other comments on commercial lot layout, access, residential to the south? I think we're generally seem on board with that. 8 units, yeah, 8 units to the south. And applicant seems aware of some of the comments that staff's made about potential improvements that would need to be made or may need to be made.
Is there a reason, like lot 1 down there on the north side of the proposed road doesn't go all the way down to Larson?
Is that included in the
I think it's part of the
outline?
outlot, yeah.
Yeah.
That is a little weird.
There's a buffer requirement around open space lots, and I'm wondering if they're not using that to meet some of that buffering requirement. And then connect it, you can't have more than 2 outlots in an open space
Oh,
lot, so I think that's just trying to connect that.
It is a pretty strangely shaped parcel.
yeah. But I'm glad to see they're, 2-acre lots.
Yeah.
One,
Yeah.
1.5 to 3 almost.
Yeah.
Or some are over 3. Yeah, that is nice to see. A little bit of a wonky layout with kind of 3 cul-de-sacs in a row, but I don't think that matters really.
They have stubbed in this concept, you'll note the right-of-way, so in theory, in some future year, that could connect.
If the homeowners are-
properties to the east redeveloped, which is, again, very long-term plan. But we'd want to see that, so they've got a cul-de-sac that's platted, and then that right-of-way continues to the east lot line.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other comments or feedback on it? I think generally supportive.
I think I heard Councilmember Bodema say this, but I just want to be sure I heard it. In terms of access to the commercial lots, with a shared access to Public Works, that does need to be a public street.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want Nate to hear that from the council, so.
And I think, isn't that what we discussed last time when it came in?
Yeah, it was.
Assuming that cost would all be bore by the
Or-
developer.
Yes. That's definitely what we discussed last time, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think that's a must,
Yep.
but other than that,
So what would that look like then? We need to keep Public Works' access for the turnaround. So if that were to go forward, they would build a street on their land. We would break our connection to 19.
Correct.
And that would connect to the new public street.
that's my understanding of it, yep.
That's,
Yes, generally as you described it, correct.
So there would just
The
be that
county would
one
require us
access.
to abandon our driveway to allow that new public street, and then we would just have basically two driveways to the new public street.
None of that's changed from when we talked about that
No,
before.
it's the same position.
Okay. Good deal.
Okay, hey, can Nate comment?
If you're still on.
it sounds like Nate wants to comment.
Nate asked to, speak again.
Shot.
Go ahead, Nate. Hey, Nate, go ahead. Nate,
Can I request one additional item of feedback?
Sure. Yes. We lose the connection.
I lost him. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. You trying to redial them?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Hey, Nate, go ahead.
One
I think we lost him again.
Yeah, keep
meeting
looking.
with the county. They-
I wonder if he's trying to ask about the third lot, and the third lot, if the county will give him access, I hear the county council saying that's fine. The county will, though, only allow one access with Public Works and the two commercial lots. So if that's the question, I think the council was okay with the third lot on the south with an individual access, right?
Yes.
Yeah, my only request to that would be it doesn't align with the home
Yeah, to
process.
try to offset it.
Right. I don't know what he was going to ask. I'm just saying, I heard him say something about the county and continuing to talk with them, so.
Gotcha. Is Nate able to message?
I haven't seen a message yet.
Okay. Maybe if someone could say if that was the question or not.
I have him again, Nate. Can you talk?
Yeah, the county, the one thing I'm wondering about is the county wanted to know if the city was supportive of the plan before they agreed to provide additional access on the County Road 19 to the southerly parts.
Can you repeat that again? We only caught the second half of the sentence.
Can you repeat that, Nate?
The county said they would consider access onto 19, but they wanted the city to give initial concept approval, so they're not chasing their tail.
Which is what I said. I think the council was supportive of Lot 3 with an individual access to 19.
Right. With our preferences of trying to be
Okay,
offset.
thank you.
Yes, with Councilmember Schultz's comment.
So, yeah, I'd say in terms of concept, we're showing support in general of it.
And this isn't a concept approval, it's just
Right.
a concept sketch plan feedback
Right.
stuff.
No, so Nate and his engineer will have to go back and change the north end to look more like the old concept with a new cul-de-sac coming in. but that council was okay with them continuing with some commercial concept on commercial lot 13, or 3, excuse me.
Three.
Correct.
I'll just add one tidbit to that. Depending what the use is, I anticipate the county will try to equidistant the spacing between the new access at north of Public Works and Larson Road. So when the developer and his team is looking at that, if that equidistance line matches up with that driveway, that might be something you want to look at early in the process, because especially if they require turn lanes based on density, it's pretty close to the midpoint between those two roads, and that's how they're going to approve it. They're going to push that to fit the turn lanes and tapers in on that road. They're going to push it to the equidistant point. So just some anticipated potential forecasting there.
And I would say if it's not able to be offset, we'd probably want to discuss something like additional landscaping to help mitigate the change in zoning to the adjacent neighbors, so that'd just be something else to keep in mind.
Can I ask a question on
Yeah.
that subject? How did they arrive at the connection on the east end of this property for all of those homes? How did it come up with right at that point, which is straight across the street from a residential?
You're talking about in the Nemi Meadows edition,
Yep.
residential one?
That whole road that dumps headlights and everything right onto that house across the street, period, and
That was probably the county too.
how did they
County-
arrive at that?
The county looks at spacing and sight distance primarily. So they would have looked at the road curving and the sight distance when they look at that layout. So they probably, I don't want to speak for them, probably don't factor in, they're looking at long-term connections, not short-term impacts. They're looking at it more tunnel vision in terms of the access to the road, I would speculate. So they're looking at it from an engineering perspective, not a perspective that council may choose to look at it. And that's based on safety. So there's standards in place to determine that.
Yeah, I think a lot would depend on what the type of use is.
But that's why I'm saying, like,
Yeah,
looking at that, they might force that connection to be
And that
close to that.
would have a negative impact, in my view, on it,
On that lot 3.
on the lot 3 having an individual access,
Yeah.
if that's what the county would force us to do.
They may, I just want to highlight that in the concept level conversation.
No, appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, and I would agree, Alan. I'd say it's worth exploring, I would say to them, but we might have some concerns if that's what the result ends up being.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Alrighty. Thank you, Nate. Okay, give me one second here. We have 8B, which was removed, and so now we are on to 8C, which is transition buffer ordinance discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have much to add. We met last month to talk about the draft ordinance. There were a couple of changes that we made based on council direction, and then the direction was to go back and look at how we would implement this. And so we contacted the other cities that use this type of an ordinance and spoke to the city attorney after the packet went out. We agree that, if you have the next slide, that the Ramsey example that was provided in the packet is a reasonable example. The city attorney agreed with the comments from the Ramsey staff that it's still going to be difficult to enforce. You're dealing with private property and trees that people probably think are theirs. But using that easement is, we think, the best tool to enforce it. The city attorney recommends adding language to the draft ordinance that notes that any violation of this preservation easement is a misdemeanor. We say that globally in our city code, but he feels that that general piece in chapter 10, chapter 1, needs to be added to this section just to make enforcement simple as a code enforcement issue rather than a civil suit. So I would suggest, if we proceed, we want to just add another paragraph making it a misdemeanor. Next slide. So if, there was the question about enforcement, that becomes at council discretion. The other cities really just deal with it on a complaint basis. They're not doing annual inspections. They haven't had, they've said, Rochester says they haven't had any complaints, so they haven't done anything. Medina said they haven't had any issues with it. Ramsey has had issues, and they, try to work through them as a code violation, and so we think this is the best tool to do that.
Do you think Ramsey had issues because they required overplanting?
That was part of it. Chris, the planner up there, who's also their forester, said they had problems with the overplanting, but they have had some issues with people just removing trees. So it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the added language makes sense, and I like the Rochester path, or how they've done that. I think that makes sense to more or less copy.
So if the council generally supports that direction, we could schedule a public hearing. If there's more feedback, more changes you'd like to see, we can certainly go back and make some more edits. But we're just looking for direction.
Good.
I thought there were a couple things we had talked about that I didn't see where it was in the draft language. One of them was the allowing 10 foot of encroachment for stormwater ponds into the buffer area to give sort of a partial allowance for that.
We definitely did mention that.
Yes, we did, and I thought I added it, so let me look. On page 6, I added the existing woodlands are protected.
They, is it
Oh, here we go, V.
Why?
J,
IV.
IV?
That's what,
Okay.
Stormwater ponds above.
Very good, glad that's in there. We also talked about whether we should allow raised planting beds in the buffer yards. I thought that was okay. I don't know if we all agreed on that, though. I thought raised planting beds would be considered a temporary structure, because they tend to deteriorate over time. But
I'd be fine with that, I think.
But we're not, do we allow temporary structures like sheds?
it says benches shall be allowed, but
So we'll kind of.
structures are not allowed. So this is II on page 6. No passive recreation, paths, storage containers, lighting fixtures, raised planting beds, or any permanent structure shall be allowed. And the next bullet, temporary structures such as benches shall be allowed.
I mean, if the idea is to create a buffer that becomes unusable, then it kind of goes counter to that.
But a planting bed creates more of a barrier. I mean, if it's, if we're landscaping in a less intense way, say it's a, Class A, Class B buffer, something like that, having a planting bed would create almost like a berm where the bed is, depending on how tall it is. Could be an enhancement.
That's assuming that the buffer is open space, right? You're not gonna plant in the woods.
Yeah, the more dense ones, I don't think you'd have light or space for it.
I guess if the idea is to create a more natural area in a buffer space, I'd kind of like to see less things allowed.
It might make it extra complicated when we don't need to, too, in terms of
Okay.
ownership.
That's fine. If we don't agree, that's not a big deal. I'm okay with
Sounds
that.
good. Anything else?
And we also had discussion about whether a local street would count as any portion of a buffer. Did we come to a conclusion on that? The last thing I remember discussing was we might consider a local street separation between differing land uses as maybe one of the lower class buffers, like an A or a B, but not anything C or above.
I could see that.
We did discuss that. My notes said we didn't change it, but that was exactly what we discussed. Is,
Okay.
if the buffer was A or B, you, Councilmember Nichols said you would waive it there, but not if it was C or above.
Okay.
I'd support that. That change. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I guess I'd be fine with that. There was also a question about, wasn't there a question in the staff report about cemeteries and whatnot?
Yes. Yep, there was that, and also about expanding uses in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally didn't see the need, in the two examples you gave, I didn't see a need for a buffer in those cases.
In the map, right again?
Yeah, I mean, where there's an existing cemetery or there's an existing, the church to add buffer when there's nothing actually being changed in that area,
Right.
didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think I agree. And in the draft, is that,
No, my notes said we were not making that change, but we could add that to the draft to say that, when existing parcels are replatted, they're not subject to the buffer requirements? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if you're saying existing parcels are replatted, like in this example, this was all one parcel, wasn't it?
Yeah, in the Hope site, is that example, that's what you're
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do you, I don't follow that when you say when the existing parcel is replatted. Are you saying just this, you're saying just this portion, right? The public institution portion that's here? How do you differentiate that from the rest of it?
I was saying existing developed parcels
Oh,
are
developed
being
parcels, okay.
replatted. I mean, I'm doing it on the fly, so I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure what I'd say, but.
yeah, I'd say
I
if
think I
it's,
understand what you're saying.
I'd say if it's being replatted, but there's not a additional or expanded or changed use to it. So, like, if they were gonna add, 10,000 square foot addition,
Yeah.
or maybe some sort of, additional use that's not on site, then I wouldn't want to exempt it probably, but if it's just this part is staying the same, I don't know if there's a need for requiring that buffer to be put in.
Okay.
Would that apply to all or just public institutions?
Well, you can define it as narrowly as you wish.
Because if you're looking at like, let's say you have a parcel of property that's long and narrow, right? And the building currently is set on one portion of it, and they're replatting the side away from that building. It doesn't make sense to put a buffer between that building and the existing property line that doesn't change.
Right, that's what I thought you were getting at, is if an existing property is being replatted, but this property isn't changing up against the buffer zone, that they wouldn't need to plant the buffer,
Yeah. that's-
even if stuff on the other side of that same structure is being developed.
Right, between where the existing structure is and the lot line that isn't being developed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd support that.
Be like this parcel next door. Would not-
Yeah, so in that example, because the purple part is an existing cemetery and church that is not changing,
Right.
that lot, that the new lot will not be subject to the buffer requirements, but everything else will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying, right?
Yep.
Yep. Everyone else on the same page about that? Yep. Yeah.
So to codify the first part that we're modifying, I'll make a motion to ask staff to add a provision to the draft language to treat a local street as a Class A buffer, where an A buffer is required, but not in any higher classification,
Okay, do we have,
Just A.
just A.
do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, that was, in terms of the change that or the topic Alan was talking about and we just discussed, do we need to change anything from the draft ordinance to implement that, or is that in the draft?
No, we need to change that in the
Okay.
draft ordinance.
Then I'll make that, do we spell it out enough, what we want that to be?
I think so.
Yeah. I'll make the motion to amend the ordinance, the draft ordinance, as discussed.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then, the last topic, really the expanding use. Where was that? Definitely was in here, I didn't make that up. That was one of the discussion points, but maybe not.
I think it was the last discussion. Similar.
I think the expanded use is the one we just talked about. I think we kind of combined both
Okay.
bullets on 4 into one,
Gotcha, yeah, that makes
but,
sense.
did we want to specifically exempt cemeteries? I guess we kind of got off that when we got on the other discussion.
I feel like we talked about that a little bit last time and said no, but
Yeah, we did talk about it, and we did not exempt.
yeah.
I think there was an argument that even though they're quiet neighbors, it was still not necessarily
Aesthetic.
desirable.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say no.
Okay.
Do we need to make a change for that?
No, that is not
That
in
is in
there.
draft. Perfect. Okay, I think that's everything unless someone else has another topic to bring up on it.
How does that conflict with what we just said about?
Well, yeah, I think that is a little bit different, because I think that first bullet about the cemeteries would be a new cemetery,
Okay.
where I think for Hope Church, if they did expand that cemetery under the change we just made as number 2, they wouldn't need to add buffering.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay, then, let's see here. Do we just need consensus to
Yep.
get the ball rolling on that?
Yes, please, and we'll move it forward to the April meetings.
Was there a question with regards to urban reserve and rural residential?
Well,
Answer that.
we did answer, you know what, I should have updated that part of the staff report. I really just updated section 3. So those were questions you already answered.
That's what I thought.
Didn't say no to that. You didn't want to do that.
Perfect.
Different.
Okay, so do we have consensus to send this to the commissions and get the ball rolling on the change?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Good.
Yes.
We're good?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, on to 9, unfinished business. We have another public comment opportunity for 9A, B, and C, which is mandatory sewer and water connections, request for extension, Horseshoe Bend feasibility study, and 2023 capital improvement plan purchase.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Anyone who's in the audience who would like to make public comment, I think we'll have you speak under your item here, so be just a moment. But anyone else who wants to speak related to those items can come to the podium, state your name and address. Otherwise, those joining us virtually can press *9. And if you're on a phone, otherwise, reactions and raise your hand if you're on an electronic device. Mayor and council, no one is raising their hand. I would note that we did get a comment in the chat from Nate thanking him for your comments.
Oh, perfect.
Besides that, we
Okay,
move forward.
sounds good. So we will go into 9A.
Perfect. Thank you,
Wait.
Mayor and council.
Oh,
Oh,
We
Oh.
potentially would like to talk on 9B, but we'd rather listen first.
okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we can make it, but let's add a comment opportunity, I suppose, after staff
After
presentation. Yeah. Perfect. And remind me if I forget.
I
'cause
was
I'm-
gonna make a motion on 9B before the staff presentation.
I think maybe given that someone wants to speak on it, maybe we shouldn't.
I'm gonna do it anyways.
Okay, that works. Okay, 9A.
Perfect, thank you, Mayor and Council. We have a request in front of us to extend the mandatory sewer and water connections. In 2016, we initiated the Downtown Water and Utility Streets Improvement Project that brought water and sewer infrastructure as well as improving streets to our downtown area. We did have a requirement when we did the project to have systems connect by 2019. We have extended that a few times through June 30th of 2023. So we have Heidi here from Heidi's Grow House who wanted to speak about a request for an extension and really just want to get some feedback from council on how we'd like to move forward, if we'd like to extend the deadline or what are options related to that.
Perfect. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members and city staff. I appreciate an opportunity to discuss this tonight. And I'm asking for another extension on hooking up to the city and sewer and water. I appreciate the grace and flexibility you've already provided to date, and hope that you see my coming to you tonight as being proactive before the June 30th deadline. I see it looming and recognize it's going to be difficult to comply. The other asset, if you will, is that we're already paying for it through our property taxes, if you will. Jessica, remind me what that's called, the licensing, or there's terminology?
Yeah, so we do have a finance agreement with certain properties in the downtown district to pay for the connection fees that are required for that. So it's the TLAC and the water connection fees, not necessarily the connection itself. That's been generally funded through the individual owners, but that's something that we, as part of the project to allow for some additional financing, did allow those connection fees to be paid over time, and we're about halfway through collecting the connection part. Now we're just doing the actual physical connection to the system.
So fully in compliance with that part of the project. And what I've also moved forward, I don't know if you guys recall, the last time I was here, I suggested that the hookup was gonna cost $60,000 to do it because of where the access is coming into our property about halfway back. It's very difficult to go into the greenhouses. And I have in the meantime identified another contractor that can do it for $45,000. So that's, savings of $15,000. So I'm trying to move this project forward, but the reality of it is I just can't afford it right now. For a myriad of reasons. We lost 30% of our staff in the Great Resignation, and you got new team members and you're not as efficient and you don't have enough team members to do the work. Our primary revenue stream is the fine gardening division, and we don't have enough people to go out there and do the work. So Christmas didn't end strong. Our margins just aren't where they are, so where I want them to be. I needed to go and get another line of credit for operating expenses, and I'm fully leveraged with our SBA loans. There's no way I would qualify for a loan to do this. So I'm asking for another extension. And hopefully my proactive behavior in coming to the council tonight illustrates that I have every intention to hook up when feasible. But I'm confident that October will not be enough time. And there's a couple of options in this, in the minutes tonight. And I suggest and ask for option 3 to set a different deadline, but not the recommendation of a final deadline. I believed I'd be able to comply now. I mean, I'm the one who came up with June 30th. I thought I could do it this spring. I wanted to do it this spring. But that didn't prove to be true. And even with business plans in place and cost-cutting measures, new strategies adopted, until we get more customers coming in through our doors, this will be a really tough capital improvement for us to self-fund. So I'm asking for a different deadline, but I don't know that I have a suggestion when that deadline would be. And I'm also asking for all of your support to come into my store and buy all of your plants and flowers and fertilizer and mulch from us until we really get our feet underneath us.
Gotcha.
Or offer, employment opportunities for your kids. That works too. So I'll take your recommendations, but hope that you can understand that I just can't comply.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Heidi. Does anyone have any questions for Heidi?
Yeah, I have a question. So you're not connected to sewer or water, correct?
No.
Is your sewer failing?
No, we've got 2 wells and there's a septic system.
Okay. I think I knew the answer to that question. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Cost me $120 to pump it every week. I'd just as soon hook up at some point.
Can I ask a question? I don't know why I want to ask this. Heidi, will you keep your wells after you hook up the city water and sewer?
Yes.
And there's obvious reasons, some of you may or may not know, but it's nice to have well water.
Yes.
We do a lot of irrigation.
Yep.
Can I just make a motion? Or do you guys have more?
How many people do we have downtown there that still aren't hooked up?
5.
There are 5 that are not fully hooked up
And
and
one that's half hooked
that's
up.
half hooked up.
Okay.
So when we did the project, we did require connections. We required connection of all the other property owners.
Gotcha. Alan, if you want to go, and then John, I think after that, unless anyone else has something, you can go ahead.
What's the financial impact to the city
To
extending? What has it been for the last 2 extensions?
Oh, there's a.
I think that
I think the majority of them, which she referenced, the area charges, is probably a important thing to make sure we had it collected, because that's kind of the funding mechanism. So this is just more of following the ordinance and the connection process. So that's, I think as long as the area charges were collected, I think that's the biggest chunk to the city, if I think that's what your question was. And this would just be kind of following the ordinance that required, it was in ordinance that they were required to connect, so it's compliance with ordinance. So I think
There are
most of the properties, there may be one, we
one or
could verify
two
that don't have
may not
that.
have a connection. I think there's at least one of them that does not have a finance, potentially.
So that would be another factor in how we approach that, but I think in this case, they've paid the fees, which is the primary financial concern to the city.
Okay, so we're made whole on fees. We're just out compliance with the ordinance, and then any water we would sell. So
Yeah, which is not it's
So that's
really more the ordinance compliance, because other property owners.
have complied.
Have
Right,
complied and
that's
were required.
And then we would be extending this for all the remaining.
Well,
Staff would
it'd probably
recommend
be the
if
best
we
call,
would,
the best way to
we
handle
would,
it.
if we were to make an exception, that we do it, or do an extension for all, just to be consistent with that.
How do we feel about a
Let's see.
1-year extension?
What's that?
How do we feel about a 1-year extension?
With the review at that time?
Well, when we extended last time, we said it was the final extension.
It's,
So if we do a 1-year extension, to me, it's a final.
final?
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's not fair to the other business owners too that have had to make financial sacrifices to do it, to stay in compliance. So,
I respect that. And everybody's in a different financial situation.
Right.
So,
yeah, I get that. I mean, I could see, I'm fine if the council wants to extend it a year, but in a year's time, I can't vote beyond that.
How would you feel about, kind of along the same logic, but to the, kind of the end of the next year's season where it could be built? So, I don't know. October of 24?
Yeah, we
fine
were
with
thinking
me.
that's
Like that.
when the end of the construction season would be.
That's fine.
Yeah, and getting nodding heads.
And extended to the other.
To the
folks that
other,
aren't
yeah,
done
the
too.
other people that are not.
Is there any repercussions of all of these people that have hooked up already? Can they come back and say,
No, I mean, other than I think, you know, I don't think there's, I'm
Not a
not
legal
aware of what they could do. I mean, I'm sure there's some legal thing they could try. I mean, I think it would just be more potential dissatisfaction that they complied and this didn't. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always a legal recourse probably out there somewhere, but I think it's more dissatisfaction that they had to.
yep,
follow through.
and we'll hear about it.
Is it possible to work with the other businesses that haven't switched and try to get one contractor to bid it as one larger project? Try to get some savings?
I could explore that.
We want to see you all succeed.
A lot of them have done that in the past, I think. Am I right, Kevin? The way a lot of them explained it to me, 3 or 4 teamed up with one.
I think they try to. It gets a little challenging because each site's a little different.
Yep.
And they're not
It can get challenging.
touching each other.
I think that's always an opportunity, but it doesn't always work out either because you have to have a willing contractor kind of.
Is there,
Willing seller, willing buyer scenario a little bit.
And the properties don't really align.
Yeah.
There's really no benefit to the contractor.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
worth
right
looking,
next to each
into
other
just
where
in
they-
case, maybe, but
I'm sorry?
worth looking into just in
Of
case
course,
there's
yeah,
something,
I'm
but
open to all options. Again, I'm trying to comply.
appreciate
And
it.
I didn't want to come to council and ask for another extension.
is
I thought
there,
it was better to come in advance of,
Yeah, we appreciate that.
this is probably, I'm just suggesting something. I gotta think about it before I talk and say it, but is there a way we can hook everybody up and assess them to their property taxes as a lien or something to that effect, and then it's all done and they're paying overtime? I don't know if that's an option, but
We could explore that with the city attorney. That was something that I had been asked the question about, because ordinance does say that there needs to be a connection, so what kind of options would we have? And that's something we could look at. We'd have to understand what the timelines.
then they pay it over 7, 10 years
Yeah, we'd
with
have to
reasonable
understand
interest and stuff. I don't know if that's something that
What
would
that would
interest
look
them.
like, but certainly something, if that's what council would like us to.
I think maybe that's more something we need to explore.
But then we've got to find the money in our budget to make it
Right.
happen up front. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's something that you'd want us to look at, we could certainly explore that sometime before, if there, for any remaining ones.
You don't have a
potentially.
backhoe on your tractor, do you?
Well, we'd have to explore it before the extension expires,
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
because at that point, we're
My
pretty
dad
much,
used to do that.
then we're just
My dad had a
carrying us
backhoe.
on
I
until we
understand.
would actually implement.
Yep.
It's not the hardest thing.
No, it's not.
No.
It's amazing the amount of
Well,
money that. has
I'll
to be
go ahead and
put
make a
into it.
motion to extend the connection through, or the required connection through October 31st, 2024 for the affected properties.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Heidi. Good to see you.
And then I think, would you guys want us to send out a letter to all remaining?
Yes.
people
Yep.
with that information?
Yep. Great. 9B.
Do we want to include in a letter something to the effect that the city's exploring options
Might not be,
at,
yeah.
at expiration?
Or maybe we say if you're, I mean, there's two parts. We can ask if there's interest in the city exploring options, or there's that, what's the city gonna do if that's the final deadline and what that means. There's kind of two different
Yeah.
ways you could say you're exploring other options. We could ask for feedback, or we
Yeah.
could just tell them we're gonna research it. So there's a different context in tone probably for the letter.
I think it should be written in such a manner that shows that we're probably not open to much further extension.
Yeah.
We can draft something.
Yeah.
And maybe bring it to council if you're having
Yeah,
trouble
we could
deciding
look
on
at
that.
doing just as a staff report.
Sure.
Yeah, draft.
Sounds good.
Draft.
Perfect. Okay.
You can't have a bigger advertiser, Heidi.
And what?
You can't have a more larger advertiser for your,
I appreciate it, all of you guys. have
Love
been
you.
very supportive. Thank you so much.
Great
As
to
you
have you
know,
part of our
Phil's,
community.
With Phil's Automotive, I don't know the other companies, if there's an opportunity to, for us to share ideas or something, I'm open to that.
Yeah, we can,
It's
it's
helpful.
public, right?
And I suspect I'm the most expensive hookup. I can't imagine the other ones are that expensive.
You wouldn't.
distance-wise.
Yeah. But yeah, we can get that to you. That's definitely, it's in the packets.
I was gonna say, I can give you my copy of the map.
She's getting mine right now.
Can I ask a question?
The map of
I
everybody.
do have that, I've got
Okay.
that, it just doesn't have their contact information. Does it?
And we wouldn't necessarily be able to
To do
give
that.
contact information that we have.
You can walk there. It's pretty close.
Not right now. Maybe in the spring.
You want to talk to Cal,
Alan?
Phil? Anyhow,
I'll get the contact information, thank you so much.
they're easy to talk to.
My question's not directly related to the hookup, but we did receive a complaint the other week about a charge, because we changed the charging method.
Yeah.
Yes.
Has that been worked out?
We have.
I think we've
set-
explained it.
We've explained it and also sent the credit policy, and we're working on getting that.
Working on getting a credit
Some-
issued of some
yeah,
kind?
because we brought forward that credit policy, which would reduce the overall base fee.
Based on usage.
Based on usage, and so we did present that to them as to try to help get those concerns resolved.
And they've got to apply for that credit every year?
I would have to go back and look at what the language
I think
was, but there
it's
was,
once
I think it
it's
was
set,
every
it's-
couple, it was every couple of years, just to confirm that that nothing's changed on the property, because it could be that something's changed on the property, and we just want to make sure that that's not,
Okay.
that we're covering those costs. But we did have correspondence with them and made sure that we would love them to apply and work through that credit
Okay,
process.
that's been shared information with other business owners?
Yes, we mailed it out with the last utility bill.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
9B.
So, my thought is we make a motion to approve option, the 10-year flood option, since we've talked about this a
Okay.
lot already. But I didn't know that you had some sort of, but I can't I'm not in charge, so he's.
No, that's
gonna-
totally fine if you want to hear from them.
Yeah.
But yeah, perfect. Let's do that, and then we can go into staff if needed.
I am Rebecca Gunderson, and I live at 6300 Horseshoe Bend Drive. And where I was asking to wait is to try to better understand it, but with you saying as far as moving forward, my one concern is about the one pipe that is gonna remain that runs from across Rolling Hills. It's listed as green instead of yellow, a yellow one being put in and a green one remaining.
Let's see. Kevin, are you following which
Yeah,
one
I think
specifically?
and Steve can walk through that. I think there's we tried to focus on what were the new pipes required in the drainage analysis, and then where there were existing. One clarification to Councilmember Bottom's pre-motion would be, there's existing pipes that we're recommending also be replaced, kind of on the side, because they're CMP pipes and they're older. So that's that $37,000 number in the report. So there's kind of the main line drainage of the analysis, and then while we're down there, replacing like 3 other culverts, because it just makes sense when we're there potentially to replace them, because they're old and aging, deteriorating. So I think her question, I think, don't want to put words in your mouth, but saying she wants to know if we're going to replace the pipe that's there.
Yes, the existing pipe that's there is actually jagged where it was collapsed.
That's the one
and
that's
then brought
crumpled,
back
right?
up.
Yep.
And there's just a safety concern that I have with the way that pipe is. And what I was gonna request is if that pipe is not replaced, is there something that can be done to where it can be cut off so that it is no longer jagged, so that we will take care of that part of our property?
Gotcha.
And the answer is if we don't move forward, we will address that outlet. We just didn't want to do work that was going to be kind of throwaway. So the answer to you is if this doesn't go through, we will address that culvert.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Tomorrow or when?
Tomorrow would be a little tough. But yes, we've been waiting for the outcome of this just for
Yeah.
Wow.
resource allocation. So
Yeah.
yes, that was brought up. I know there's, it's a concern of these individuals, so.
It will not help this spring. Except, what I want to make a motion is option 2. Where you do the 10-year flood.
Okay.
And then also, do we need to authorize the ability to take out old pipe too? Is that part of?
So we wanted to compartmentalize what was kind of necessary for the drainage improvements and what was more of a maintenance cost. There's still costs that we'd have to come up with, but we wanted to compartmentalize those for what was the improvement and what was a routine maintenance project, so. I guess I probably blew that in there, but we would recommend the maintenance part if we're moving forward with the project.
So it'd be
So
total of
if you're
if we're
doing the 10-year one, it would be 210 plus 37. Would be the.
No, it'd be 231
or
plus
231,
37.
Sorry, 231 plus 37.
So I'm gonna amend my motion and include the 37,000 for what we would consider to be maintenance as part of the cost of that project.
10-year and that add-on.
Yes.
So we have a second from Jeremy. Any further discussion?
Can I ask, do we have other areas of the city that have flooding issues like this due to poor development?
Yes, this is not an uncommon scenario in some of the older neighborhoods. We looked at, the two most recent examples, when we did, we looked at the street improvements in Corcoran Trail East and West. There was some flooding issues where the road overtopped outside of the 10-year design. So some of these neighborhoods are 40, 50 years old. So the precipitation's more intense, the standards were different. A combination of reasons could have led to some of the issues we're seeing. In that case, we looked at the 10-year and then we looked at a value approach. We ended up doing the value approach with that project.
So was that factored into the assessments, or was that
No.
across board by the city?
It was barely anything that would classify as like.
We had the appraisal gave us, and I think it was a $500 valuation for that. So that's where in my cover letter, we were approved to do that here. We had a conversation and it was going to be a $500 valuation. So
Yeah.
we just, as staff said,
Yeah,
not working,
not
doing
working
an
for that.
assessment process for that valuation. So that's the one, that was 2 years ago we did that.
Yep.
So this is the other scenario. This got kind of an outcome of, through the conversations with the garages 2 development. So we haven't, part of the problem is we don't have a stormwater fund.
Right.
And so this will probably help us understand costs for some of these things. We still have to bring that back to you, and we have to elect to move forward. And it's pretty complicated because you're talking about area fees or area charges and then a general stormwater utility. And so you have to really lay out a detailed program, and we're working through that because we've been under the direction of focus on the area charge, not the utility fee. So it does complicate what you can use it on. And we owe that back to the council, and it's on the list here. You should see that soon.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to get a kind of an understanding of how many potential projects we might have looking at the next few years. And what-
we can go through and try to outline, maybe make a heat map of where we know of problems, if that's of interest to council, and bring that back or provide that through Jessica. I would say it's probably in the dozen of these scenarios. There's even another one in the Horseshoe Bend neighborhood up on the north side, that's in a different drainage area.
A dozen at 268,000, or?
Each one would be different.
Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to get
Similar scenarios where we're not maintaining today's standards, or they were, a combination of reasons. It's all over the place, but certainly would qualify as a similar type situation where it's not set up for today's standards.
Okay. Yeah, and I would suggest council needs to do something about figuring out some type of area charge or some way of financing this so it's not coming through bonding or general fund.
Yeah, I'd be supportive of that.
And so, I guess one other clarification is we have been trending towards bonding for this. We had a placeholder that was above what we're looking at right now. But then the other option is we do have a approximate balance of 25,000 in a allocated to stormwater stuff. Do we want to tap into that 25,000 or just plan to bond for?
It's not gonna make a material difference when you figure out.
I think I would just bond for it would be
Yeah.
my recommendation.
Yeah.
That's what I would suggest.
I think for this one, we just do that and then look at some sort of area charge for future projects.
We do have that feasibility study. We had that work session a couple months ago, so we'll be bringing that back.
Perfect.
We're
Okay.
making progress on that.
Sounds good. So we did have a motion and a second, and unless there's anything else, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Okay. On to 9C, capital improvement plan purchase.
9C.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at, I'm sorry.
No, no worries.
Do you want, I can run that, sorry.
You
I was-
want to? Yeah.
Yeah, so, the Public Works team is bringing forward a recommendation for a 2023 approved expenditure. I included the breakdown showing that we had bonded for a $50,000 trail maintenance equipment accessories line item. We didn't know what we were gonna do. We've done a bunch of evaluation. The guys met with a bunch of neighboring cities to try to understand what makes the most sense. And their recommendation, which I am in agreement with, would be to purchase a John Deere 4066R tractor with a Pronovos P800 snow blower attachment. And one of the things I wanted to point out is through that process, we actually had another tractor, a John Deere 4720, that is in our 2024 replacement plan, which you guys haven't seen yet. You might have seen it as a forecasted one. So our approach is essentially to replace that tractor that was due in 2024 with this. So we're kind of merging two items, column, and merging them into one. So that we see that as a value-based decision, and then the blower really, we feel is the most flexibility for trail maintenance. A lot of the cities around us use it, and we feel like that gives us the most, the best scenario. And one example is in some of the newer neighborhoods, we have trails that cross a bunch of driveways, and that blower really allows us to direct that snow away from some of those driveways. And then the other uses for this would be, where we're replacing that 4720 would be, we could blow down at City Park. We would be able to use it in events like we had this year, where we have a lot of snow storage issues in cul-de-sacs, meltdown, which creates kind of ice underneath, and then we have a big snow event and we can't push that. I mean, our push equipment gets stuck. So we could go into these cul-de-sacs and blow it back to clear some space. So it's not just, it would not just solely be used for trail maintenance. It would be primarily used for trail maintenance, but it would have dual purposes and dual applications. So with all that being said, prices are only going up in future years. We thought it was a good value-based decision. We recognize we don't have a trail maintenance policy yet. It's something that is in our council goals for this year. We wouldn't get this, we would get this equipment in time for this next winter season. If we waited till afterwards, we don't know what the lead time would be, and we anticipate prices would be more. So the recommendation was to bring it forward tonight to try to capitalize before the next price increase occurs at the end of the month.
Gotcha.
Question?
Yeah.
The tractor would only be used for snow blower? Would it have a bucket attachment that you could use it for other things? Obviously, it has a 3-point. It's not just a snow blower?
I think it would be set up to be able to use our things. I don't
Okay.
know that specific question, but in my conversations with Pat, he's always trying to
I know,
capitalize
yeah.
it, so I could follow up with you on that.
And then the other question is size of the tractor. We're 4066 Is that bigger than the 4720? If I go off the old numbers and stuff, the 4720 is more horsepower than the 4066, I think.
I don't know that answer, I
Okay.
apologize. I will say that this is the preferred method of our team that we rely on to do all our maintenance.
No, I know, and I'm guessing that he's already thought that out, and it's
Yeah.
probably more horsepower, the numbers change up. And then is there a reason it's green?
What
You
color
want it
should
purple?
it
Well,
He wants
be?
to
Color out there.
there's a significant amount of
price it out.
price difference from this brand to other brands that, green paint is awful expensive, and I know everybody likes it, but
Red paint's expensive too.
there's
Yeah.
I can have Pat follow up.
just a general question.
Yeah, it comes up, I know the Toro mowers are red that we purchased recently, so I don't know that we're all green out there, but, I really think the team looks at it and it's.
They've dug
it's
deep.
not- It's not by preference, it's by maintenance, it's by warranty, it's by
Okay.
service. Price is a huge component. Like I said, we're taking this $50,000 23 allocation, blending it with a potential 24 allocation, and we're coming in $45,000 under budget, and we think we can accomplish the goals that we think are coming. So
Okay.
I think there's a ton of value in this, and I apologize, I'm not.
No, that's all right. I'm asking specifics, and if Pat was here, we'd be talking an hour and a half about it, but
Yeah, Steve said it's a bigger motor, he was able to research.
it is bigger. I was gonna jump in, 4066 is bigger than 1720. That 1720's gotta be 5 years old, 6 years old.
4720.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's older than that if it's on the.
Okay,
Yeah.
then numbers have changed. Thanks. I'm good.
Okay.
Just so it's not just a snow blower.
It's then,
You'll have other attachments.
it's, yes, like if we had it here today, we'd be using it at the during the snow event.
Oh, yeah, but I'm just saying that it's a,
Yeah, it's a multi-purpose, the tractor's multi-purpose. Again, it would serve the primary role for trail maintenance, which
Yeah.
would be the objective of the line item, but it would not just
Could
be
be used
sitting there
for-
waiting for trail maintenance. All of our fleet we try to use it, we have storage limitations, so all those are factored into when they make recommendations.
I think they're the same horsepower, the
So-
4720.
Would this be used for ditch mowing too?
66.
I don't think this one's used for ditch mowing, but I can verify.
Okay.
Do we have another tractor that I think would serve that role?
So my concern with this request is it's a request for trail maintenance equipment, but we have no trail maintenance plan. It hasn't been discussed by Parks and Trails, and it hasn't been discussed by council. So it's almost like we're putting the cart before the horse here. I think council needs to have a discussion regarding trail maintenance and what the desires are. I'm assuming we'll have some type of trail plowing, but what that entails, is this the right equipment for it? I don't know, maybe we'll decide we don't wanna maintain trails in the winter too. And the tractor component might make sense, but then the snowplow might not, so. I want council to figure that out, because we already have HOAs or private contractors plowing trails that will, in the future, be ours, and we should figure out what the council's desire is, so that current residents don't have an expectation that it's gonna be maintained in the exact same way that it's currently being done. So,
I guess my question from there would be, if we're doing any amount of trail maintenance, would this be what we wanted? Regardless.
This is, yeah, we spent a lot of time, and we still have plows, and we still have broom, we have other things, it's a little bit unique, but we believe this would be the primary best piece of equipment to maintain trails with.
But then you'd also be using it to blow snow on cul-de-sacs and those kind of
Yeah.
things, so it's not just trail maintenance tool.
Yeah, again, we went into it with, because we had a designated $50,000 we bonded for under that line item, right? So we went in trying to accomplish that goal. And then we evaluated all our equipment, and we started merging a future needs at the same time. So we could delay it. I agree with Councilmember Schultz that it is the trail maintenance conversation is going to be a grind. It's one of the hardest things to settle, you know. That's a valid point. I think we are trying to accomplish something that wasn't decided already, right? So we can pause that, we have the 50,000, it stays in there. I just think that if we don't order it soon, we may miss a cycle, so just be prepared that we might miss a cycle. And it will likely be more expensive, you know, in a year if we pause a year to figure it out. So it's just certainly the council's purview. We're trying to check the box on this item that was approved and bring that forward with a recommendation. So it will be a expectation challenge for us. It will be, how are we gonna prioritize? Is it gonna be its designated route? Are there options in the interim? We think we're growing towards wanting to maintain trails ourselves. Are there interim options way up in Northeast where there's I mean, it's gonna evolve, but I think we wanna invest in it being a city-maintained trail versus there's resources expended to manage contracts too. There's expectations of managing contracts too. It eats up staff time, so there's expenses.
I haven't even thought about that as far as contracting the work out. I was just thinking about what's the city wanna do from a city standpoint as a service to our residents. And you kind of bring up a point too, is this equipment won't work on the bridge or whatever we call that thing that we're building up in Bellwether. Boardwalk. So do we have equipment lined up for that, or is that gonna be something we'll be paying for?
I think, well, we don't have that's a final design for that boardwalk. So I think there's a potential that it could support it. That's something we're working through to finalize that. So, I mean, we don't even know if that's gonna be open year round either, so.
Right, and that's part of the question that we have to have as council. Do we wanna keep trails open year round as a maintained item for walking? Or do we make them some other type of recreational trail in the winter, be it cross-country skiing or snowshoeing or snowmobiling or whatnot, you know? I think those are questions we need to answer pretty quick, as we're gonna be taking trails over pretty soon. You know, so, something we need to think about.
Definitely.
I think whatever the mix ends up being, we'll want some of them open for walking. I'm certainly open to the idea that maybe there would be areas where we could have cross-country ski trails or something like that. I think there's value in having a mix, but walking is pretty heavily used. I think we probably won't end up in a place where there won't be any city plowing. So it seems like it's a good tool. If it's gonna last us a long time, we're gonna use it and need it anyway. Getting it at a lower price seems to make sense for now.
I think I agree, but I think it's also a good point that we need to have that conversation, or at least start that conversation, because I think it's gonna take a while to hammer out. But it's an important one.
Both ways, it's gonna take different pieces of equipment to maintain those trails. I mean, if we leave them walking past cross-country ski and stuff, we just leave the snow, or are we gonna groom them,
That's a good
there's a
point.
lot to talk about.
You know, like they were they were blowing the trails from Ravinia today with a Bobcat blower, or some other type of small equipment.
Is that a HOA deal?
That's what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
yeah. Is
Well,
it?
I
That's
think
the
what's
HOA.
HOA
Really?
or developer, depending on
Yeah.
where they are in the process, but yes, we haven't accepted them yet.
If,
But we will be I anticipate we will. I know I've said this for 3 years now. I would be very, very surprised if we didn't take a fair amount of trails over the course of the summer.
Yeah.
After they fix all the weeds growing through the middle.
Yes.
This tractor wouldn't do those sidewalks, though.
No, we don't, we're only responsible for the bituminous trails through
Okay.
the developments.
so Baker doesn't, or Rebecca does not plow their trails. There are tons of places that do not plow or maintain their trails.
Yeah, the park district doesn't typically.
But I got a question for you. 46RR, does it have a cab?
Base price is 40, 48,000.
Didn't look like
I
it,
don't think they have a cap.
not from what I can
I
find.
don't think it has a,
It's got the option cab.
Let's see,
You're
build-
gonna need a cab.
Build
Yeah, but
your
there's
own.
a different, I thought that there's a different number.
And not, cab is just an option on the tractor itself.
No, I know, but usually, well, when I've,
I would think that they would be wanting to sit in the cab for winter maintenance. I would anticipate it as a cab. It's pretty chilly.
well, yeah, I get it.
Cab is gonna be $10,000 to $17,000 depending on the size of the tractor and a 66 horse tractor and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
guessing it's gonna be on the high side of $16,000, $18,000 for a cab.
Well, and that probably was taken into account because the overall
Oh, I
cost
see
was
it, okay.
76.
Yeah,
But then we're saving on the other.
This one.
Yeah,
Well, the
it's
blower is
76.5 for it, minus the 31 for the trade-in, so
Right.
it's to the 45.5. I rounded a little bit there.
And we get whatever discounts by purchasing from certain places, right?
Yeah, I think we're actually
It's
exceeding the state contract through negotiation, so
Great.
it's a good deal.
Yep. I,
Okay.
deals, when will you sell the other one? Or do you
I
already have
think
it?
it's a trade-in price when we buy this.
Got it. Okay.
I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to purchase the John Deere 4066R tractor with snow blower at the estimated net amount of $45,500.
So moved.
Do you have a second? I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Okay. On to 10. We have a public comment opportunity. Do we have anyone online?
We do have 9 people
Oh, cool.
online.
Okay, we have
No one raising their hand.
public comment for 10, A through F.
Anyone joining us virtually can press star 9,
75
or
horsepower.
if you're joining us on a phone, or click reactions and raise your hand. We can recognize you.
Okay.
No one is
All good.
raising their hand.
10A was tabled or removed, so on to 10B, charitable gambling fund authorized tables and chairs purchase.
Wait, 10A is done?
Yeah, they requested we put it on a different meeting.
Requested to be moved due to wet weather, and just not being able to attend.
Can we talk about it even if they're not gonna
Sure.
present? Because
That's certainly up to
Do we need to put something back on the agenda technically?
I took it off.
Yeah.
comfortable adding.
I'll make
We
a,
removed it, and we could add it.
I'll make a motion to add discussion on topic for 10A again back onto the agenda.
I'd second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, John, go ahead.
I don't think there's any way that I could ever support going in on a private-public partnership on really anything, but especially a sports complex. And what it ends up happening is, like, we build a baseball complex and residents can use it on Sunday mornings from like 8:30 to 9:15. And then it's booked from that point on until, the next Sunday at 8:30.
Right.
And so I would, and I would actually not spend public money on virtually any private-public partnership of any kind. And so I would have, we've never done a financial assistance project before, and I would really have enormous reservations on doing one at this time, or probably any time for any reason.
I gotcha. I think I agree. I was mostly curious as to what the request specifically was going to be, because I don't
Yeah.
feel like we ever got a sense of that.
He has talked to staff a little bit about some ideas, but we requested a narrative, what I got, due to just some complications in their schedule. What I got back was what is in the staff report.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that he doesn't have a plan, I don't know, I just haven't seen a formalized plan and ask. He came in and spoke with
Me and Dean.
Counselor Van Camp and Mayor McKee during the summer and had some ideas, but I don't know.
But
if
not
those
about the
have-
financial assistance.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know if they-
excited about it, but not to our expense. And John, just real quick, being part of Maple Grove and the community center and Lifetime Fitness and all of that stuff, that parks director presented that to the council at that time and had numbers that would pay for it in, I think it was 8 years, and it actually had generated enough money to pay for it back in 4 years. But there was 45,000 population of Maple Grove at that time. I mean, that's a great example. I know Plymouth followed that example, but that's a way different usage than just a bunch of ball fields and stuff. But I feel the same thing. I was excited for it.
Yeah, it was a
And with
cool
all the
sounding
backing
project.
that he was talking about, everything was great, and then he threw a number out saying, we need this much help, and
Yeah.
I'd rather come to the council and everybody say the same thing I'm feeling.
You ever skate at the, you ever skate at the, in Maple Grove?
Oh, I've used it many, many times for many things, yeah.
Well, the hockey teams have it from like
Yep.
5:30 in the morning
Yep.
till 11:30 at night. So Sunday mornings between like 8:30 and
Yeah.
9:15, the public can come skate for
There-
$15 or whatever. It's crazy.
It was really challenging when there was one rink, but
Then they
it's still
expanded.
just as. But again, it is a generator. It does a good job and such, but the initial investment was
Substantial.
done. Return was in 4 years, and it's a money generator for Maple Grove. I think Plymouth followed that and such. I think that one's doing very well, but it's
No, it's
completely
not.
different kind of thing.
They have to-
Plymouth's not?
No, Maple Grove, it was, I think it was on the budget this fall. They have to spend $15 million because they had, they
I've got to
authorized
look at that then.
a tax, an extra tax in Maple Grove because they didn't set any money aside to maintain the rinks. So.
Oh, I thought I did that.
No, it was.
So I got to read up on that and stuff.
Yeah, I
It
don't
needs to
even
be
know.
Better thought out, but
They.
we got to get a lot bigger before we start
Right, either
giving
way,
up.
it's something that's,
And we got to be smart about it, so.
The financial impact between like fitness center, hockey rink, community center, that's got a different model to it than
baseball
baseball fields
specific,
that will
yeah.
sit under snow all winter long.
I think some are indoor, but
There was a pretty good-sized building. I thought there was
Yeah.
2
but
indoor.
still same place, niche, more niche.
Yeah.
And then talking about, he shared some restaurants around it, and
Yeah.
I started questioning that on, restaurant and bar being around a 12 and under or 15 and under facility type deal. It just,
Sounds perfect.
it's a great idea, very enthusiastic, very, very insightful and stuff, but when the number came across, I'm like,
So we gotta be a government that gets to sort out good ideas and bad ideas, and the good ones, like we get to put the city in that sort of business that seems like a really bad idea.
agree.
He did mention if he needs to move forward with it without public funding, that he would potentially, could look at it, but he was just looking at opportunities. So if it's something that council would still be interested in, we could talk about it further at concept plan. We haven't seen a formal concept plan yet.
Right.
I know he has information out on his website about the potential location in Corcoran, so
Mhm.
that's what we've shared so far.
I'd be fine hearing from him, just, if nothing else, just so the whole council gets a better understanding of what he's thinking.
Look at on March 9th.
Is that what we
discussion.
decided? When we tabled it
That's
earlier?
when he.
Oh, that's when he wanted,
That's
yep.
when he requested, if you
Sure.
would like, me to push it to the March 23rd meeting, we could look at doing that instead.
I think if the
That's
9th
pretty-
works for him, that works.
Thank you for having him come early and not spend a whole bunch of staff time on it.
For sure. For sure. Okay, on to 10B. Charitable gambling fund.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jessica Christensen-Buck is joining us virtually today and can talk about this idea.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excuse me.